Okay, we're going to talk about Panamax by designers Gilles Doré, Nuno Santiago and Paulo Soledad, but I sense very deeply that you don't want to talk about it because one look at this cover and you went, Efka, nah, this is, it's ugly, what are you doing? And I get it, I agree, it's terrible, and just by looking at it, I can feel my IQ dropping to that down of a barn door. But there's actually one good thing that came from this cover, and that's that Twitter user Game Nights Guru photoshopped Paul Dean onto it. Actually, that does look much better. Alright, face swap mode engaged. And once you open this box, the things inside don't get any much better, but we'll get onto that just a little bit later, because aside from the atrocious quality of artwork in this game, Panamax is very, very interesting. And I don't mean the sort of interesting where you have tiger skeletons with machine guns interesting. I mean, what if Gordon Gekko was a shipping boat in a Panama Canal? Interesting. In Panamax, you will be fulfilling cargo contracts, loading that cargo onto boats, and then pushing those boats through the narrowest locks and waterways of the Panama Canal while simultaneously managing a stock portfolio. All in the name of, I was gonna say money, but seriously, the aesthetics in this game, it's like the opposite of arousal. What are these? They're not coins, they're tiddlywinks. What does set my loins aflame is this action selection mechanism, because it turns Panamax from a game that's quite complex into something that's easy to explain, because on your turn you can only ever do two things. You can either take a contract card which has cargo on it and load that cargo onto ships, or move those ships through the Panama Canal in hopes of getting that cargo delivered and getting yourself some money. What makes it cleverer than that is that the strength of each action is tied to which dice are available in this action pool. You can ever only take a die from the bottom row, which is often terrible, but sometimes that's all you'll have. But if you do take it, you're unlocking the better die for your opponents. There are no good options in Panamax, so you just take the best out of what's bad and count your blessings. In fact, this feeling of everyone has it better than I do constantly permeates this game. And if you're looking for a pat on the back and a sense of achievement, look somewhere else. Panamax relentlessly shoves bad options into your face and leaves you wading through them, like the Sanford and Sons of shipping routes. What's funny is Monty Python's Confuse a Cat sketch. What's funny about Panamax is that often you're the only person responsible for getting yourself into these horrible situations. Let's say that you've loaded your wonderful HMS ship prefix full of precious cargo, which feels like an achievement, because as soon as you move that ship all the way across the Panama Canal and load that cargo, you'll be able to get your company a lot of money and maybe celebrate with a milkshake. But of course, as soon as you do that, your opponents will move their ships full of their cargo into the canal ahead of yours. And then when you want to move your ship into the canal, you will be moving their ship ahead of yours for them with your action. And they will be twiddling their sextants and drinking your milkshake. And thus, you'll be rubbing your cargo with your enemy's cargo and your ships with your enemy's ships. And in fact, whenever you load cargo, it doesn't even have to be on your ship. It can be on any ship you like. And whenever you move a ship, you can move any ship you want. And that is amazing because it lets you explore this game in so many more ways than one. In fact, whenever you move, you have to use all of the movement up, which at times feels wonderful, as you'll be positioning your rivals' ships into more expensive parking slots, or at times feel miserable as you realize that you have to waste your movement onto your opponent's ships. This is where Panamax takes the open-ended feeling to the max. Sure, you can try to play a game of these are my boats and this is my cargo and I'll only load my cargo onto my boats and this is my birthday and I will cry if I want to. But then the harsh reality is that everyone will stop caring about you. They'll be bro-fisting each other up because they have mutually invested interests, and all you have is a sad milkshake that nobody wants to drink. This game of you carry my cargo and I'll carry your cargo. It's best at a full complement of 4 players. And actually, at 2 players, it just barely ever comes into fruition. Each time you fulfill a contract card associated with a country, you will get that country's flag and you'll get to hang it in your office. If said flag covers up a bonus action, you get to execute that bonus action immediately, which is possibly the weakest part of Panamax for me. You see, these bonus actions are quite good and often worth pursuing. The problem being that the selection of contracts is very meager. You only have 3 to choose from, and it is entirely possible that they will all have the same flag. Ironically, of course, not the flag that you need. And even if it does have the right flag, it is quite possible that the numbers on it just won't be very high for the cargo, and or the type of cargo is not opportune, so you'll just feel dejected and do something else. Yes, there are ways to play around that, but it often feels tedious, laborious, and dull. To reel you back in, let's talk about stocks. Because yes, there's stocks in this game and a stock market right here. And just like with cargo, you can buy stocks in your own company, or you can even buy stocks in your opponent's companies. And that is delicious because the canal world is your oyster. Just don't eat oysters from a canal. But to really get to appreciate what stocks do in this game, you're going to have to bear through a bit of a rules explanation. Remember when I said that moving ships through the canal with cargo and then unloading that cargo gets you money? Well, it does, but it gets you company money, and company money is not personal money, and personal money is what you need to win the game. In fact, ironically, the only ship that you can move to get personal money is military ships, and you can't even load cargo onto them. But if you're good with the country whose military ship you're moving, well, they'll line your pockets with a bit of personal cash. So what is company money good for? Well, at the end of each round, you will have to pay what is effectively parking fees. Do you have cargo that's still on boats on the canal? That's going to cost you money. Do you have contracts that have cargo on it still unfulfilled? That will cost you money. Do you have containers in your warehouse? That will also cost you money. And that's what will largely motivate you to move these boats through the canal, because you won't be getting any personal money from it. And personal money is just code for victory points. And if you don't have enough money in your company to pay for them, you will have to take out loans, the interest of which you will have to personally cover yourself. And that is some very sexy financial talk. And after that, you'll have to pay out your shareholders. If you have shares in your own company, great, that's your company money turning into your personal money. But if other opponents invested into buying shares from you, well, then you'll have to pay company money to them. And that's what turned this from an average pickup and delivery Euro game into something that's completely unique, because you can ache over this puzzle of how to move cargo across the canal as much as you want, but unless you have a way of turning that into a real profit, well, none of that is meaningful. Even though Panamax feels accessible at all times, the complexity of the game makes it an experience you'll have to play more than once to fully feel comfortable behind the captain's wheel. In a game where every action doesn't lead you any closer towards victory, but simply prolongs bankruptcy, you're going to have to be very tricksy to eke out every small bit of profit that you can. And whilst the action selection does feel restrictive, the open nature of how you resolve those actions will make everyone at your table relish so many beautiful moments that this game creates. What isn't as good as relish is the graphical design of this board. Maybe Branston relish, but I've always maintained that Branston is just vinegar garbage, and this board doesn't even evoke the flavor of vinegar. Let's get the obvious out of the way first. Most of it is just grass and water textures with dashed lines, and whilst that in itself is forgivable, because, well, in the very small amount of time since this game was published, board game artwork has shot leaps and bounds. What isn't forgivable is the amount of detail in this game, and detail serves two things in board game artwork. First, to reinforce the theme, and second, to remind players of little fiddly rules. And whilst Panamax does do it, it just doesn't do it enough. And there's something so incredibly majestic about the industrial congruence of ships that is just missing from Panamax. And instead of having, like artwork of cranes and cargo being loaded and ships docked in the docking area, we just have a slightly darker blue rectangle and a slightly lighter blue rectangle. Out of the many exceptional games published in the last few years, Panamax is the one that would benefit greatly from just having more detail in it. Hindering the comprehension of the rules, surprisingly, is the rule book. There's not really much to be said here aside from the fact that it is incredibly unhelpful at teaching you how to actually play the game. Without the assistance of other YouTube channels such as Paul Grogan's Gaming Rules or Richard Ham's Rado Runs Through with his ever-vigilant goof spotter Paolo, I think I would have struggled to actually know where to begin playing this. It's not good. Even though Panamax is largely open-ended and lets you decide how you achieve your goals, it does throw you a paddle to latch yourself onto in the form of financial advisor cards. These have objectives listed on them, and as long as you achieve them by the end of the game, you will score extra personal money. Now that is all good, except that once you get the hang of the finer subtleties of the game, you realize that some of these let you score way more points than others. And whilst that doesn't make the game any less compelling and doesn't really matter in your first few plays, it robs Panamax of its longevity. And in a game with so much rubbing against each other, it makes me wonder whether it would be more sensible to have these secret goals open information, and then if someone gets dealt a good card, you can actually act upon it rather than sit there gobsmacked at the end of the game when someone flips their card over and says, "Hey, I got 25 points out of them, and how much did you get out of yours?" Well, I only got 9 because mine was capped at 9. But that's a minor flaw in what is a very unique experience that, unlike most other Euro games, will let you fiercely interact with your opponents for a good couple of hours, pushing flat cardboard boats with dice loaded onto them. And that's the most fun I've had with an economic simulation that doesn't feature trains. And oh my god, am I glad it doesn't feature trains. So there, Panamax is excellent, and you really should. I'm not going to tell you to get on board, but you get the general idea. Last week we didn't have a review because we were very busy working on our Kickstarter pledges, but we didn't want to disappoint, so we wrote an article, and you can find the link for it in the description below. It's about couples games. You should check it out, or share it to couples you know who don't necessarily game yet but maybe would like to. That would be a good thing to do to support our channel. Another good thing to do to support our channel would be just to subscribe. Just subscribe. Just be a friend, be a nice person, and subscribe. And then you'll get videos every Thursday, and maybe even articles, more stuff, and sometimes convention coverage. It's all good, and wait till you see what next week's video is going to be. I'm not gonna say it's like anything to do with Mars or anything, but just, oh, so good.